guys, this is Alicia with Good Morning Sunshine. So today was very weird. We were supposed to have a lecture at 1 o'clock, our necropsy lecture, but that got canceled. And also, we didn't have classes this morning, but some groups had bovine lab, so that's why I have my bovine lab on Thursday. But yeah, so I didn't have to go in till 2, which was nice. So I got a lot done. I still feel behind for some reason, but yeah, so we had 2 lectures today, both on nutrition. We did water and energy requirements, and then we also did macronutrients. So I was going to start with water and energy requirements. So water is the most important ingredient in an animal's diet ration, just like for us. An animal can't live without water for not that long. But they can live without food for longer than they can without water. So the water's purpose, it serves many functions. Inadequate water consumption will negatively impact the food feed consumption, thermoregulation, growth, activity, milk production, nutrient transport and processing, hydrolysis reaction, and etc. Heat stroke occurs when the body is incapable of dealing with metabolic heat production. So dehydration prevents sweating and heat dissipation. So water requirements are influenced by losses, which are influenced by work, environment, and diet. So in order to calculate the daily water requirement in meals for a 50-pound adult dog, you would do 50 pounds divided by 2.2, which equals 22.7 kgs. So you get into kgs, and then 22.7 kgs times 60 meals per kg would equal 1,362 mils, which equals 1.4 liters. An adult dog and adult cat, their daily water requirement is between 60 and 100 mils per kg body weight. However, she told us we just have to remember that it's 60 mils per mil per kg for body weight. And this will be on the exam, so hopefully that is on the exam. That would be nice. So then we have water sources, which is drinking water. There's water in food. There's metabolic body water, which is glucose plus oxygen, yields energy and carbon dioxide and water. Fat is less than carbohydrates, which is less than protein metabolism. So camel, you probably wonder how a camel survives in the desert without much water. Well, they use fat metabolism. So that's the best kind of metabolism. Water requirements are met by metabolic water, like I said. Drinking water and in their diet and ration of water. Metabolic water is produced during energy metabolism, and for every gram of fat, carbohydrates and protein oxidize about 1.1 grams, 0.6 grams, and 0.4 grams of water respectively is produced. And then we have drinking water presentation. Presentation influences accessibility, palatability, and monitoring. Also, you want to look at the quality, so the total dissolved salts, make sure that the total dissolved salts is less than 1,000 milligrams per liter, which is ideal. And there's also water in canned food. So basically, if you're buying your pet's canned food, you're mostly paying for water. So high moisture foods have water. Canned food usually contains about 80% moisture, so that's 80% water, and that's 20% dry food. So realistically, looking at this, you're paying for water. So water is 75%, protein 8%, fat 5%, fiber is 1.5%, and other is 10.5%. So basically, paying for water. So you'd have to take that into consideration. And then we have water and fresh forage. So for the pasture, contains 26 to 82% moisture and water as fed, but the average is 46% moisture as fed. And then we have dry matter, which is abbreviated as DM. That's the in small animal nutrition. So dry matter equals food/feed with 0% moisture in it. However, to do this, you would have to throw the food in a drying oven in order to obtain 0% moisture. The purpose of this is for nutrient comparison, so the dry matter basis per calorie basis. The dry matter intake represents the feed consumed by an animal minus the moisture content of the food. So we have a couple conversions we have to remember and do. So we have as fed yields dry matter conversion. So we would do the amount as a percentage or decimal of protein divided by the dry matter as a percentage or decimal in order to get that amount. So nutrient concentration, you start with 20% protein as fed, which would be represented as AF. The number will increase, converting it to a dry matter. And then we have the conversion of dry matter to as fed conversion. So you would do protein percentage or decimal times the dry matter. So the nutrient concentration here would the number will decrease in that situation. And then the third conversion is as fed to dry matter conversion, but this has to do with the feed weight. So you would do dry matter in pounds times the dry matter as a decimal, and then the number will go down in this case. And then lastly, the fourth conversion, we're doing dry matter to as fed conversion, again having to do with the feed weight. So we would do pounds as fed times the dry matter. So the number will go up when converting to as fed. So she gave us a couple demonstrations here. So this is as fed, I don't know if you can read this, to dry matter conversion, nutrient concentration. So what is the concentration of protein on a dry matter basis? So we were given that 8% was protein as fed, and then 75% moisture in as fed in this nutrient concentration conversion. So we had to calculate the dry matter. So we would do 100% minus 75% because that was the moisture. So you would get 25% dry matter. And then we had to calculate the percent protein on dry matter basis. So then here we would do, because we knew it's 8% protein, and I told you to start with the protein as a decimal or percentage, and then you divide it by the dry matter in a decimal or percentage. So you'd have the 8% divided by 0.25, which then would equal 32% protein. Again, the concentration here of the nutrient is higher when you subtract the moisture out. I can go over all these examples with you, but I am not going to. So we went into dry matter in large animal nutrition. So dry matter here is the food feed with 0% moisture again. The purpose is for nutrient comparison. They do the feed based on the dry matter feed weight target. It's for mental and GI health. So more in the forage and microbiome lectures, we're going to learn about this. The target daily dry matter for herbivores is about 2% body weight. Voluntary dry matter intake varies. So this, they also went over examples, but I'm not going to go over those with you because I basically stated how to get the conversions in the beginning. So then we got into energy. Energy is the ability to do work. Inhibitory metabolism is the intercellular process by which nutritive materials are converted into cellular components. So converting carbohydrates, fats, and proteins to cellular energy, such as ATP. The ATP molecule transfers free energy in the form of high energy phosphate. High energy phosphates originate from three primary sources, and that is systolic glycolysis, mitochondrial TCA cycle, which is also known as the citric acid cycle, and then mitochondrial respiratory chain. So energy production can be anaerobic or aerobic. Anaerobic, oxygen is not available. It's used for fast energy, whereas aerobic is oxygen available, slow energy, and more energy produced. Energy ATP production occurs by, again, aerobic or anaerobic. Dephosphorylation of ATP to ADP provides the energy. ADP must be converted back to via phosphorus donation. Muscle creatine phosphate provides energy for about 6 to 8 seconds. Therefore, to sustain muscle contraction, ATP must be produced via the aerobic or anaerobic mechanisms. Aerobic metabolism, again, has to do with the TCA and citric acid cycle. It yields 36 moles ATP molecules per glucose and 120 plus molecules ATP per molecules FA. Anaerobic metabolism, which also known as glycolysis, yields 3 molecules ATP per molecule glucose and 2 molecules ATP molecules glycogen. So anaerobic metabolism, their substrate is carbohydrates only, used in glycolysis. The location is in the cytosol. Lactate is its byproduct. This has to do with fatigue and gluconeogenesis via the Cori cycle. Aerobic metabolism, substrate is carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and this can go into the TCA cycle to get energy. Its location is the mitochondria. And then we got into energy value of macronutrients. We have the lipid, the protein, and the carbohydrate. The lipids have twice the energy content of proteins and carbs. However, lipids they have low metabolic heat, whereas proteins are the highest. Lipids have low respiratory quotient, and carbs is the highest. And then we got into energy value of feed. We have gross energy, which is food energy. It's burnt in kilometer. And then we have digestible energy, which equals gross energy minus fecal energy. We get this far in horses. And then we have metabolizable energy, which is digestible energy minus urine and gas energy. We get this far in cats and dogs. And then we have net energy, which is the most precise. It equals metabolizable energy minus heat increment, because energy is lost as heat, and we get this far in cattle. So here's the chart as I was saying. So digestible energy for horses, metabolizable energy for dog and cat, and net energy for cattle. So it varies by species and economic impact. Energy requirements, you have to have a metabolic body weight. So you do body weight raised to the 0.75, and then you'd have to have surface area. So a mouse needs about 18 times more energy per unit body weight compared to like an elephant. Energy requirements are not linear. Body surface area per unit body weight positively influences energy expenditure and thus requirements. Surface area may be estimated by calculated metabolic body weight. Much energy is lost as heat. Like I said, more surface area equals more heat loss. When we raise body weight to the 0.75 power, we are calculating metabolic body weight. So then we got into energy requirement terminology. So we had the basal metabolic rate, which is the BMR. So you would do 70 times the body weight per kg raised to the 0.75. This is this kind of metabolic rate has to do when the animal is fasted and sleeping in a thermo-neutral environment. And then we have resting energy requirements, which is RER. This is somewhat hard to measure, but is often used synonymously with BMR. So again, it's 70 times the body weight in kgs raised to the 0.75. And this is the calculations for kcal per day. And then we have the daily energy requirements, the DER, which is the RER, so the resting energy requirements plus the needs for maintenance, growth, reproduction, and work. And then we have the maintenance energy requirement, which is the MER. So this is the DER for maintenance, so eating and moving. The maintenance energy requirements, again, MER equals daily energy requirement for maintenance, so kcal per day. So we do the DER equals the RER times DER factor in small animals. Adult, not reproducing, not growing, not working, and horses are a linear calculation. So in order, we have to know for the exam, we have to know the species and life stage. So dog, adult, neuter, you would, how to calculate the DER. So you do 70 kcal times the body weight in kgs raised to the 0.75, and then times this by 1.6. But for a cat, adult, neuter, you do 70 kcal times body weight per kg raised to the 0.75 times 1.2. And then for a horse, adult, non-working, and average, we would do 33.3 kcal times body weight per kg. So the daily energy requirements are influenced by species, gender, breed, life stage, and environment. So we calculate energy requirements with body weight in kilograms versus pounds here. And then we have effects on the environment on energy requirements. Energy expenditure positively influenced by environmental temperature, above upper critical temperature and below lower critical temperature. For animals housed outside, consider how the seasonal temperature changes influence energy requirements. So is the energy provided accurate? How do you know if you are feeding enough calories per and energy? Body condition score we would use. If body condition score is low, and then the current diet ration is inadequate. If body condition score is high, then the current diet ration is excessive. It's generally that simple. So that was the end of our first lecture, and then we got into macronutrients. So nutrient essentiality, it's essential, it's conditionally essential, and it's non-essential. So essential nutrients are nutrients that must be in the diet because the animal cannot make enough to meet the needs. Non-essential nutrients are nutrients adequately produced endogenously. Conditionally essential nutrients are those essential only during specific physiological states, this being essential during growth but not in adulthood. Nutrients may be classified as organic versus inorganic. Carbohydrates, fats, proteins, and vitamins are organic nutrients because they contain carbon. Water is an inorganic nutrient. Proteins are amino acids connected by peptide bonds. Amino acids are molecules containing carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and sulfur or phosphorus. In general, animal-based protein sources are rich in sulfur containing amino acids. So protein function have to do with muscles, hormones, enzymes, plasma oncotic pressure, and acid-base balance. Protein requirements. Cat and dogs have higher protein requirements than humans. Cats are carnivores. Ruminants have a more in microbial contribution. So we have a table, but we don't need to memorize it, so I'm not going to show you it. It just shows us the requirements for dog, cat, and horse. And then we got into food feed protein analysis. So crude protein equals nitrogen percentage times 6.25. It does not differentiate amino acids versus non-amino acid nitrogen. So we have an amino acid analysis. Then we did, again, more food feed protein quality. So is it rich in essential amino acids or non-essential? Non-essential mainly being plant-based. So body can make these on its own as long as it has enough essential amino acids. And essential are animal-based. So then we have the small animal protein sources. So we do this on a calorie-based scale, which is this. So we have all of those. And large animal was right under that protein sources, which is grass hay, alfalfa hay, soybean meal. This is not all of them, but those are the main ones. So we have indicators of adequate protein intake. We have the muscle condition score. We have this serum albumin, and these are helpful but are not just for nutrition alone. Then we got into lipids. Lipids cannot be used for anaerobic metabolism. Lipids are fat. Lipids are the most energy dense of the macronutrients. Lipids are an important component of cell membranes. Lipids are important components of cell membranes, and the lipid type determines membrane characteristics. Phospholipids are important components of cholesterol, steroid hormones, and fat-soluble vitamins. So lipid function, they give a lot of energy as ATP. It's aerobic, They go through the TCA and citric acid cycle and the mitochondria. They have lipid membranes, they're fat-soluble, vitamin absorption, and neurological and retinal development. Lipid types include triglycerides, which is a glycerol with 3 fatty acids, phospholipids, and free fatty acids. Fatty acid structure, they're saturated and unsaturated. Unsaturated means there's no double bonds, and then you have monounsaturated, which includes 1 double bond, and then you have polyunsaturated, which is more than 1 double bond, and polyunsaturated are our essential fatty acids. So we have the fatty acid structure. So the polyunsaturated fatty acids, also known as PUFAs. We have omega-6, which is important for platelet and immune function. Its first double bond is at the 6th carbon from the methyl end. It's a linoleic acid. It's a arachidonic acid. And then we have omega-3, which is an anti-inflammatory fatty acid. Its first double bond is at the 3rd carbon from the methyl end. We have alpha-linolenic acid, EPA, DHA, and it's anti-inflammatory, like I said. So fatty acids have different structures in length. There's a short chain. This is volatile fatty acids, which is less than 6 carbons. Then we have the medium chain, which is 6 to 12 carbons. This includes like coconut oil. Then we have long chain, which include all the essential fatty acids, so all the polyunsaturated, which they have 13 to 21 carbons. Then we got into lipid requirements. So different life stages for dog and cat. We have linoleic acid. It's more in a dog than it is a cat. And then we have the arachidonic acid, which is not existent in dogs, but is in cats. And then we have the alpha-linolenic acid. It's not in cats, but it is in dogs. And then we have the EPA and DHA. It's more in dogs than it is in cats. Then we have lipid sources, which are plants and animal tissue. Like I said, plants being leaves, grain, and seed. Animal tissue is variable. It's dependent on the animal and the diet. And then we got into carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are a primary energy source for animals. Glucose is an important fuel. Some tissues, such as the brain, red blood cells, and the fetus, prefer glucose as an energy source. Glucose is stored as glycogen, a polysaccharide in the liver and muscle, and as a fat in adipose tissue. Glycogen storage is limited. Fat storage isn't. Glycogen may be converted back to glucose. Fat conversion to glucose is very limited. Glucose is transported with sodium, which is why Gatorade makes sense, i.e. Glucose is co-transported with sodium to help with oral rehydration. So carbohydrate function, there's energy for ATP. It's aerobic, again, goes through the TCA and mitochondria, and it's anaerobic, has to do with glycolysis and with the cytosol. Energy is for the brain, the fetus, like I said, blood glucose, gut microfunction. And then we got into carbohydrate structure. So we had monosaccharides. These examples would be glucose, galactose, and fructose. And then we have disaccharides, which is 2 units of those. So you'd have a glucose and a fructose together or whatever. And then you have the oligosaccharide, which is 3 to 10 monosaccharide units. And then we have the polysaccharide, which is more than 10 monosaccharide units. And then we have non-fiber versus fiber. Non-fiber is the alpha 1 to 4. An example would be starch. And then fiber is beta 1 to 4. And your example would be cellulose. And then we have carbohydrate sources. Again, plant or more concentrated source includes grains, vegetables, and forage, whereas animals include glycogen. And then we have the carbohydrate analysis. We have fiber, we have crude fiber, also known as CF, which is the fiber content of food. It's insoluble, doesn't represent TDF, which is the total dietary fiber. Total dietary fiber is soluble and insoluble. Neutral detergent fiber, NDF, is for large animals, as well as acid detergent fiber, which is ADF, also in large animals. Non-fiber is nitrogen-free extract, NEF percentage, which equals 100 minus percent moisture, plus percent crude fiber, plus percent crude protein, plus percent ether extract, which is fat and lipids, plus percent ash, which is minerals. And then we have the dietary carbohydrate terminology. So non-fiber carbohydrates at the monosaccharides are glucose, fructose, and galactose. Disaccharides are sucrose, maltose, and lactose. And the polysaccharide is starch. And the insoluble fiber carbohydrates include the polysaccharide cellulose. And then we have the soluble fiber carbohydrates, which is FOS and MOS. And yeah, I think that was the end of that lecture too. So we only had 2 today. But I also watched a video on necropsy. We have necropsy lab tomorrow, so that's gonna be hopefully great because that's what I'm looking into. So hopefully I learn a lot there. But yeah, I love you guys, and I hope you had a happy Tuesday.